Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the neutral position. Now, this is basically two opposite-handed fighters looking at each other in the ring with distance between them. You can see from the blue and the red feet in the illustration, there is no advantage to any guy. This is basically you're sizing each other up in the ring. There is simply no stylistic advantage to the southpaw or the conventional guy. Here we see Manny Pacquiao, Timothy Bradley. Okay, now as you can see, both of these guys get into the neutral position. There is no advantage to either guy. Anything Manny Pacquiao can do in terms of creating angles or positioning can also be done by Timothy Bradley, speaking strictly from a boxing point of view. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the fact that your lead hands are going to be parallel, and this often results in both guys trying to establish the jab and running into difficulty because there's going to be clashing of the lead hands. Now, this is where you're going to give, in most cases, the southpaw an experience advantage because he has more experience at neutralizing the conventional opponent's jab because he's faced more conventional opponents in sparring and in fights, whereas the average conventional fighter hasn't faced as many southpaws. But it's still an experience advantage. There is no stylistic advantage to the southpaw.
This was in history. On the undercard of Pacquiao, which we didn't have a chance to show to the others.
So as I said previously, the lead hands will clash because they're parallel. Now, there's a contest to establish the lead hand, and due to the southpaw's experience with sparring and fighting more conventional opponents, you might give the southpaw an experience advantage, but there is still no stylistic advantage. Anything a southpaw can do with his jab, a conventional opponent can do the same thing. And here we see Rigondeaux use his forearms to block his conventional opponent's jab. This is not a southpaw advantage. Tion Kennedy do the exact same thing with his forearms to block Rigondeaux's jab. It's the same thing. Now, I don't know where this idea came from that the conventional opponent will struggle with the angle of the southpaw's jab. The southpaw's jab comes from a similar angle as a straight right hand from a conventional opponent. So if you can deal with a straight right hand, you should be able to deal with the southpaw's jab. It comes from a very similar angle. Okay, now let's watch what happens. So here we see my all-time favorite Mexican fighter, El Finito Lopez. Watch how he slips this southpaw's jab to the outside, left uppercut down the middle. So what's so difficult about that? It comes from the same angle as a straight right hand. Watch again. Slip to the outside of the southpaw's jab, left uppercut down the middle, right down the pipe. If you can slip a right hand, then you should be able to slip the southpaw's jab. There's oh my goodness. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the fact that the strong hands are basically offline. What I mean by this is the straight right hand and the straight left hand is facing isn't basically on line with the line of attack of your opponent. In other words, it's not on target with the head or the body. It's slightly offline, especially if you use that line in the illustration as the head of the opponent. You can see how it's slightly offline. Now, this is solved by the L shape or the L position. This is widely talked about when discussing fights between southpaws and conventionals. Now, the L shape or the L position is basically talking about lead foot dominance. This is the way in which a fighter brings his strong hand closer to his opponent and in line to land that big punch. This is how you do it, by stepping that lead foot to the outside. Lead foot dominance or outside foot dominance. Now, as you can see from the illustration, when the southpaw places his lead foot on the outside of the orthodox opponent's lead foot, this is lead foot dominance. Now, this is how the southpaw can bring his power hand, that straight left hand, in line with his opponent's head or his body and close the distance between his opponent and his straight left hand. Notice how this allows the southpaw to shoot the straight left hand in a straight line trajectory. Now here Pacquiao steps to the outside, shoots a straight left hand. Watch Pacquiao's lead foot now. Watch that right foot, how he's going to step to the outside. So here you see Pacquiao step his lead foot over to the outside of the conventional opponent's lead foot. Now, when Pacquiao isn't lunging with his straight left hand, he actually intelligently closes the distance between himself and his opponent by establishing outside foot dominance, as you've just seen him do in this image. Now, see how that brings his straight left hand in line? See how Pacquiao only has to shoot the punch in a straight line trajectory? Beautiful to watch. Now, if we continue to see what I'm saying, again, Pacquiao is able to gain lead foot dominance on Marquez by using his jab to distract him, allowing Pacquiao to step his right foot over to the outside. So this is something you really do have to give Pacquiao credit for, because he has great understanding of the L position and how to establish lead foot dominance on his opponent. See the straight left hand. Now, there's nothing about the L shape or the L position or lead foot dominance that is exclusive to the southpaw. There is no advantage to being a southpaw stylistically. Take a look at the illustration. You can see that when the conventional opponent steps his lead foot to the outside of the southpaw, the exact same L shape and L position is made. Now the conventional opponent has the advantage. As you can see, when you step your lead foot to the outside of a southpaw, you bring your straight right hand in line with your opponent. You close the distance between your opponent and your straight right hand, and you can shoot the right hand in a straight line trajectory. No different from the southpaw. Stepping your lead to the left of the southpaw gives you the exact same advantage that the southpaw gets when he puts his right foot on the outside of your left foot. There's no difference.
When money gets too close to...
So as you can see from Juan Manuel Marquez, he steps to the outside. Here we see Marquez establish lead foot dominance, or the L position, on Manny Pacquiao. Once again, there is nothing a southpaw can do that cannot be done by a conventional opponent. There is no stylistic advantage to being a southpaw. There you see the overhand right. Okay, so now a lot of people like to bring up the T line as some kind of justification or example as to a natural advantage for a southpaw. Totally incorrect. But they know that most people don't know anything about boxing, so they can just show you these fancy graphics and illustrations, and they know a lot of people just go on different forums and on different websites and on YouTube and repeat what somebody else told them, because that's what people do. People repeat things. Now we're going to take a look at what the T line actually is. It's an advantageous position that you establish on an opponent, usually an opposite-handed fighter. Now, the T line is basically lead foot dominance taken to an extreme level. And this is the most dangerous position you can find yourself in. In this illustration, the southpaw is on the outside of the conventional opponent's left shoulder, right? So you can see that what this does is this allows the southpaw to attack with both hands, whereas the conventional opponent is literally limited to not even being able to attack with any hand. Why? Because his left hand is at an awkward angle, and for the conventional opponent to use his right hand, he has to punch across his left shoulder. Okay, so this is a position you don't want to find yourself in. Now, notice that the southpaw, again, can attack with two hands, and he's in the advantageous position. But this is nothing different that can't be done by a conventional opponent, and I'm going to show you. But first, let's take a look at the southpaw doing this in a recent fight.
Down at the end of round two from that sweeping right to the chin, and there's a straight left that drops him.
So let's take a look at this very closely. See how Amir Imam finds himself in a terrible position. You can see that Imam's feet are in between Maldonado's lead foot and his trailing foot. Notice how Maldonado is outside the left shoulder of Amir Imam. Maldonado is on the top of the T line, whereas Imam is on the tail, and therefore unable to punch effectively with either hand, whereas Maldonado can launch punches with any hand. Now, can you see that Imam's feet are in between Maldonado's feet? Look at the diagram in your top left and compare it to the image in the fight. You can see exactly the same thing happening. Maldonado is on the T line. Amir Imam has found himself in a dreadful position where he's on the tail and his feet are facing the opposite way and are in between Maldonado's feet. This is where you don't want to be, and you see he gets dropped because he's in the bad position. So now you're looking at the T line again, but this time you have a conventional boxer on the top of the T line and you have a southpaw on the tail. As you can see, this is simply lead foot dominance taken to an extreme level. The conventional boxer is on the outside of the right shoulder this time of the southpaw, and he can attack with any hand and from any angle, whereas the southpaw has to punch across his right shoulder with his left hand, and the southpaw's right hand is in an awkward position. No different.
A bit, slow his feet down a bit, slow his feet down.
So what you are witnessing right now is Juan Manuel Marquez leading with a left hook to the body. This is actually a left hook to the liver. May I remind you that the southpaw fights with his liver forward, and therefore it's easier to stop a southpaw with a liver shot than it is a conventional opponent. As you can clearly see, the liver of the southpaw is forward and in an advanced position, and Marquez is able to lead with that left hook down to the liver of Manny Pacquiao. That is something to keep in mind. Okay, to finish up the video, I'm just going to answer the question, is there any advantage to the southpaw? And the answer to that question is yes. The southpaw, on average, has an experience advantage over the conventional opponent. He has been facing way more conventional opponents since he's been very young, sparring and fighting. So he is more aware of the angles. He's more likely to be able to capitalize on these angles and positions. But that is the only advantage. Anybody who tells you that the southpaw stance gives you additional angles or allows you to do tricks that the conventional opponent cannot do is lying to you and doesn't know what he's talking about. The only advantage is experience. Anything the southpaw can do, you can do the same thing. But the difference is the southpaw is probably more effective at those angles because he's been doing it for more time. Please make sure you click the red button to subscribe to my channel if you already haven't. Then check out some of my previous videos, or you could check out one of my more popular videos right now. Or you could do absolutely nothing and go out to the outro music.
My niggas, they killers and they some jag boys. Don't call my phone for a feature, I text, you know it. Stalking bitch up on my line, I had to press ignore. Ran around with the slammer, never paranoid. On papers and I'ma still